Do you find yourself repeatedly attracted to people who seem to embody qualities you wish you had? Do your romantic relationships feel like they're trying to teach you something important about yourself that you can't quite grasp? Jung discovered that romantic attraction isn't random or purely physical, but is actually your unconscious mind's way of guiding you towards psychological wholeness through the eternal dance of what he called your inner masculine and feminine. Before we explore Jung's revolutionary understanding of the anima and animus and how they shape every romantic relationship you'll ever have, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. This research into Jung's most profound discoveries about love, attraction, and psychological development requires extensive study of his complete works, and your support helps me continue bringing you these life-changing insights about relationships and personal transformation. Carl Jung spent decades studying what he considered one of the most powerful and mysterious forces in human psychology, the unconscious attraction between masculine and feminine energies that drives not just romantic relationships, but the entire process of psychological development and creative expression. He discovered that within every person's unconscious mind live what he called the anima and animus, archetypal figures that represent the opposite gender within your psyche. But Jung's understanding of anima and animus goes far deeper than simple gender psychology. He discovered that these archetypal forces are actually the unconscious mind's way of guiding you toward wholeness, creativity, and authentic self-expression through the relationships and attractions you experience throughout your life. Every person you've ever been drawn to, every romantic obsession you've experienced, and every relationship pattern you can't seem to break is actually your psyche trying to teach you something crucial about your own development. Think about your own romantic history for a moment. Have you noticed that you tend to be attracted to certain types of people who share similar qualities or characteristics? Have you observed that your relationships often bring up the same issues or challenges, even with completely different partners? Have you experienced attractions that felt almost compulsive or fated, as if you were being drawn to someone by forces beyond your conscious control? Jung discovered that these patterns aren't coincidental or purely personal. They're manifestations of your anima or animus trying to guide you toward the qualities, experiences, and aspects of yourself that you need to develop for complete psychological wholeness. Your romantic attractions are actually messages from your unconscious about what you need to integrate within yourself to become who you're truly meant to be. But here's where our culture has created a massive misunderstanding. We're taught to view romantic attraction as either pure chemistry, personal preference, or social conditioning. We're rarely taught that attraction is actually a psychological and spiritual process designed to facilitate growth, healing, and the development of your complete authentic self. Jung understood that this cultural misunderstanding leads people to approach relationships from a place of unconsciousness, seeking completion through another person rather than using the relationship as a mirror for their own development. This unconscious approach to relationships often leads to disappointment, codependency, and the repetition of destructive patterns that prevent both personal growth and authentic intimacy. The first secret Jung discovered about the anima and animus is that these archetypal figures are not just psychological concepts, but living forces within your unconscious that actively influence your thoughts, emotions, attractions, and creative expression. For men, the anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect of the psyche, while for women, the animus represents the unconscious masculine aspect. But Jung was clear that these forces exist regardless of your gender identity or sexual orientation. Every person has both masculine and feminine energies within their psyche, and the anima and animus represent the aspects of these energies that remain unconscious and undeveloped. Your romantic attractions are often your psyche's way of encountering these undeveloped aspects of yourself through projection onto others. Jung noticed that when you're attracted to someone, You're often seeing qualities in them that actually exist within your own unconscious, but haven't been developed or integrated into your conscious personality. The intensity of romantic attraction often corresponds to the degree to which the other person embodies aspects of your anima or animus that are seeking expression and development. The second secret Jung discovered is that the anima and animus evolve through distinct stages of development throughout your life, and your romantic attractions change as these archetypal figures mature within your psyche. Jung identified 4 primary stages of anima development and 4 stages of animus development, each characterized by different types of attractions and relationship patterns. In the early stages, anima and animus projections tend to be based on physical beauty, sexual attraction, or idealized romantic fantasies. People in these stages often experience intense attractions to partners who embody conventional beauty standards or who seem to fulfill romantic ideals learned from culture and media. As the anima and animus mature, attractions begin to shift toward people who embody emotional depth, intellectual compatibility, or spiritual qualities. In the later stages, attractions become focused on partners who can support mutual growth, authentic self-expression, and the development of wisdom and meaning. Jung observed that understanding these developmental stages can help you recognize where you are in your own psychological development and what your current attractions might be trying to teach you about your next stage of growth. The third secret is that the anima and animus serve as bridges between your conscious personality and the deeper layers of your unconscious mind, including what Jung called the collective unconscious. When you experience a powerful romantic attraction, you're not just encountering another person, you're encountering archetypal energies that connect you to universal patterns of human experience. This is why romantic love often feels larger than life, why it can inspire extraordinary creativity and spiritual insight, and why it can also trigger profound psychological transformation. The anima and animus carry the energy of what Jung called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that bridges conscious and unconscious content and creates new possibilities for growth and expression. Jung noticed that people who learn to recognize and work consciously with their anima and animus projections often experience dramatic increases in creativity, intuition, and spiritual awareness. They begin to access aspects of themselves that were previously unconscious, leading to more authentic self-expression and more fulfilling relationships. The fourth secret Jung discovered is that romantic relationships serve as alchemical laboratories where the anima and animus can be consciously encountered, understood, and integrated. Every romantic relationship provides opportunities to see your unconscious projections clearly and to reclaim the qualities you've been seeking in others. Jung understood that the purpose of romantic relationships isn't just companionship or even love in the conventional sense. The deeper purpose is psychological and spiritual development through the conscious integration of your anima or animus. This process transforms both partners and creates the possibility for what Jung called the conjunctio, the sacred marriage of opposites within the psyche. This integration process often involves recognizing that the qualities you most admire or are most attracted to in your partner are actually qualities that exist within your own unconscious and are seeking development. It also involves recognizing that the qualities that most irritate or trigger you in relationships often represent aspects of your anima or animus that you've been rejecting or suppressing. The fifth secret is that the anima and animus are not just personal psychological forces, but are connected to what Jung called the archetypal realm, the layer of the unconscious that contains universal patterns and images that have shaped human experience throughout history. Your anima or animus carries not just personal content, but also collective wisdom about masculine and feminine energies that transcends individual experience. This is why romantic love often feels mythic or archetypal, why lovers throughout history have used similar language and imagery to describe their experiences, and why romantic relationships can trigger profound spiritual and creative experiences. When you encounter your anima or animus through romantic attraction, you're connecting with forces that are both deeply personal and universally human. Jung observed that people who understand this archetypal dimension of romantic attraction often experience their relationships as sacred encounters that can facilitate not just personal growth, but also creative expression and spiritual development. They begin to see their romantic life as part of a larger cosmic dance of masculine and feminine energies that has been unfolding throughout human history. The sixth secret Jung discovered is that the anima and animus are intimately connected to your creative and spiritual development. Jung noticed that periods of intense romantic attraction or relationship transformation often coincide with bursts of creative inspiration, spiritual insight, or significant life changes. This connection exists because the anima and animus carry what Jung called the creative matrix, the psychological space where new possibilities are conceived and brought into being. When these archetypal forces are activated through romantic attraction or relationship experiences, they often stimulate creativity, innovation, and spiritual awakening. Jung observed that many of the greatest artists, writers, and spiritual teachers throughout history understood this connection intuitively. They learned to work consciously with their anima or animus as sources of creative inspiration, using romantic experiences as gateways to accessing deeper layers of creativity and spiritual insight. The seventh secret is that the anima and animus serve as guides for what Jung called the individuation process, the psychological journey toward becoming who you truly are. Your romantic attractions and relationship experiences are actually your psyche's way of guiding you toward the qualities, experiences, and aspects of yourself that you need to develop for complete self-realization. Jung understood that the individuation process requires the integration of both masculine and feminine energies within the psyche, regardless of your gender identity. The anima and animus represent the aspects of these energies that remain unconscious and undeveloped, and romantic relationships provide opportunities to encounter and integrate these missing pieces of yourself. This understanding can completely transform your approach to romantic relationships. Instead of seeking completion through another person, you begin to use relationships as mirrors for your own development. Instead of trying to change your partner, you focus on understanding what your attractions and relationship patterns are trying to teach you about your own growth. The eighth secret Jung discovered is that the anima and animus undergo what he called a process of differentiation throughout your psychological development. In the early stages, these archetypal figures tend to be undifferentiated and projected wholesale onto romantic partners, leading to idealization, obsession, or the repetition of unconscious patterns. As you develop psychologically, the anima and animus become more differentiated and conscious. You begin to recognize your projections, understand your attraction patterns, and consciously work with these energies as internal resources rather than seeking them exclusively through external relationships. This differentiation process often involves what Jung called the withdrawal of projections, learning to see your romantic partners as they actually are, rather than as carriers of your unconscious anima or animus content. This withdrawal of projections is essential for developing the capacity for authentic intimacy and mature love. The ninth secret Jung discovered about the anima and animus is that these archetypal forces carry what he called the wisdom of the opposites, the understanding that psychological wholeness requires the integration of seemingly contradictory qualities and energies. The anima and animus represent the aspects of yourself that are opposite to your conscious personality, and learning to integrate these opposites is essential for complete self-realization. Jung noticed that people often resist or fear the qualities represented by their anima or animus because these qualities seem to contradict their conscious self-image or social identity. Men might resist the emotional sensitivity, intuitive awareness, or receptive qualities represented by the anima. Women might resist the assertiveness, logical thinking, or independent qualities represented by the animus, but Jung understood that this resistance to the opposite qualities within yourself actually limits your potential for growth, creativity, and authentic self-expression. The anima and animus are trying to guide you toward a more complete and balanced way of being that incorporates all aspects of your psychological potential. When you learn to consciously integrate the qualities represented by your anima or animus, you often experience what feels like a fundamental expansion of your personality and capabilities. You become more creative, more emotionally intelligent, more spiritually aware, and more capable of authentic relationships. The 10th secret is that the anima and animus serve as mediators between your personal unconscious and what Jung called the collective unconscious, the layer of the psyche that contains universal human experiences and wisdom. Through romantic attraction and relationship experiences, you're not just encountering personal psychological content, but also connecting with archetypal wisdom about love, creativity, and spiritual development. Jung observed that people who learn to work consciously with their anima and animus often gain access to insights and wisdom that seem to transcend their personal experience and education. They might suddenly understand universal principles about relationships, creativity, or spiritual development that they've never studied or been taught. This access to collective wisdom through the anima and animus is one of the reasons why romantic love has been considered a spiritual path in many traditions throughout history. When you work consciously with these archetypal forces, romantic relationships become opportunities for accessing universal wisdom about the nature of love, consciousness, and human potential. The 11th secret Jung discovered is that the anima and animus are intimately connected to what he called the transcendent function, the psychological mechanism that creates new possibilities for consciousness and expression by bridging conscious and unconscious content. Romantic attraction activates this transcendent function and creates opportunities for psychological and spiritual transformation. Jung noticed that intense romantic experiences often catalyze significant life changes, creative breakthroughs, or spiritual awakenings. This happens because romantic attraction activates the anima and animus, which in turn activate the transcendent function and create new possibilities for growth and expression. Understanding this connection can help you approach romantic experiences with greater consciousness and intentionality. Instead of being overwhelmed by romantic intensity or trying to control romantic outcomes, you can learn to work with romantic energy as a catalyst for personal transformation and creative expression. The 12th secret is that the ultimate goal of the anima and animus is what Jung called the hieros gamos, the sacred marriage that represents the complete integration of masculine and feminine energies within the psyche. This sacred marriage isn't just about romantic relationships with others, but about the internal union of all aspects of yourself into a harmonious and authentic whole. Jung understood that achieving this internal sacred marriage is the ultimate goal of psychological development and the key to accessing your full creative and spiritual potential. When masculine and feminine energies are integrated within your psyche, you become capable of what Jung called whole person functioning, where all aspects of yourself work together in harmony. This internal integration also transforms your capacity for external relationships. When you're not seeking completion through another person, you become capable of authentic intimacy based on mutual growth and shared purpose, rather than unconscious projection and dependency. But here's what Jung discovered that can revolutionize your approach to romantic relationships. Understanding that every attraction you experience, every relationship pattern you repeat, and every romantic challenge you face is actually your psyche's way of guiding you toward greater wholeness and authentic self-expression. Jung also discovered that the quality of your relationship with your anima or animus directly affects the quality of your romantic relationships, creative expression, and spiritual development. When you approach these archetypal forces with consciousness and respect, they become powerful allies for growth and transformation. When you ignore or resist them, they often manifest as compulsive attractions, relationship problems, or creative blocks. Jung's approach to working with the anima and animus involves several key practices. First, developing the capacity to recognize your projections and understand what your attractions are trying to teach you about your own development. This means paying attention to the qualities you're drawn to in others and asking yourself how these qualities might need to be developed within yourself. Second, learning to dialogue with your anima or animus through practices like active imagination, dream work, or creative expression. Jung discovered that these archetypal figures can become conscious allies when you learn to communicate with them directly, rather than only encountering them through projections onto others. Third, consciously working to integrate the qualities represented by your anima or animus into your conscious personality and daily life. This might involve developing emotional intelligence if you've been overly rational, or developing assertiveness if you've been overly passive, or any other integration of opposite qualities. Fourth, using romantic relationships as opportunities for mutual growth and consciousness rather than seeking completion or trying to change your partner. This means taking responsibility for your own projections and using relationship challenges as invitations for personal development. Most importantly, Jung emphasized that working with the anima and animus is not about becoming less masculine or less feminine, but about becoming more complete and authentic. The goal is not to eliminate gender differences or become androgynous, but to develop access to the full range of human psychological and spiritual capacities. When you understand your anima or animus as a guide toward wholeness rather than a source of confusion or compulsion, your romantic life becomes a path of conscious development. You begin to see every attraction as a message, every relationship as a classroom, and every romantic challenge as an opportunity for growth. The people who understand this approach to romantic relationships often report that their love life becomes more fulfilling, authentic, and transformative. They stop repeating unconscious patterns and begin to attract partners who support their growth and authentic self-expression. They discover that honoring their anima or animus actually enhances rather than complicates their romantic relationships. Remember, the greatest love stories throughout history have often been about people who understood that romantic love is ultimately about the journey toward wholeness and authentic self-expression. Your attractions aren't random or purely personal. They're guidance from your deepest wisdom about what you need to develop to become who you're truly meant to be. What has your experience been with romantic attraction patterns? Have you noticed recurring themes in the types of people you're drawn to? How might understanding your anima or animus change your approach to romantic relationships and personal development? Share your insights in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more content that explores the deeper dimensions of psychology, relationships, and personal transformation.